On New Year's Day in 1942, the United States, Great Britain, and the Soviet Union signed the United Nations Declaration. Their goal: to stop Japanese and German aggression in its tracks. A mission that was easier said than done, especially when considering how thousands of miles separated their capitals, so coordinating their effort was not easy. However, in late 1942, something changed and Allied forces embarked on a series of coordinated military campaigns that would turn the tides of the war in their favor. On August of 1942, U.S. Marines landed on Solomon Island of Guadalcanal under the orders of Commander-in-Chief of U.S. Fleet Admiral Ernest J. King. King's goal was to use the Marines in an operation best known as Operation Shoestring. By landing on Guadalcanal, King wanted to keep the initiative that the U.S. had seized with their victory over the Battle of Midway, when U.S. dive bombers destroyed 4 of the 6 Japanese aircraft carriers. King believed that by landing on Guadalcanal, not only could the U.S. keep the momentum it had worked so hard to gain, but it could also bring forth the destruction of Japan's Pacific perimeter. With the 1st Marine Division being entirely new to the Pacific, and their commander, General Alex Vandergriff, wanted the Marines to train for at least 6 months before he sent them into action. Not to mention that Guadalcanal's task force commander, Admiral Frank Jack Fletcher, would have to keep his ships on station to resupply the Marines after they landed. This meant that ships were all but sitting ducks for enemy's forces. Add all this together and you have a very good reason for not wanting to go through with the operation. However, King did not see it this way. Instead, King claimed that the invasion would take place even on a shoestring. So on August 7, 1942, the 1st Marine Division landed on the Solomon Island of Guadalcanal and surprised the Japanese garrison before overrunning its partially finished airstrip, soon to take the name Henderson Field. Although it seemed like King's plan was off to a good start, the parade of disasters soon began when the Japanese cruisers delivered a crushing blow to the U.S. naval forces off Sable Island, sinking 4 cruisers. Then, to make matters worse for the Marines of Guadalcanal, the Navy suspended all transports into the island. With the aircraft carriers gone and no air cover for the invasion fleet, the Marines found themselves stranded on an island with only captured Japanese rice and dried fish to survive. In the slots, it was naval battle after naval battle. In fact, so many ships were sunk that the water around Guadalcanal is called Iron Bottom Sound. On land, the fighting was no better. The Marines were trying to defend the only advantage they had, Henderson Field. If they could hold Henderson Field, then they could station aircraft on the island itself, allowing them to fly for hours overhead, providing air support to ground troops. This was a huge advantage over Japan, since their bombers had to fly from the island of Oregel, which was nearly 550 miles away, with only a few minutes of fuel left to fly over the target before having to return. For days, Japanese came close to Edson Ridge, a ridge just south of Henderson Field, in waves only to be beaten back by machine gun, mortar, and rifle fire. When all was said and done, the Japanese had lost 700 men while the Marines only lost 135. After these battles, Edson Ridge was renamed Bloody Ridge. With October came the climax of Operation Shoestring. Both Japanese and U.S. forces were taking losses in a slugfest of men and equipment. While Japan was second-guessing its decision to keep fighting for Guadalcanal, the U.S. was planning on getting more aggressive. They were doing this by bringing in Admiral William F. Bull Halsey, and with him came the 164th Infantry Regiment, the Navy's largest troop convoy since their initial invasion of Guadalcanal. Admiral Halsey and the 164th Infantry came just in time. Between October 24th and 25th, Japan launched a last desperate attempt against Bloody Ridge. The Japanese attacked a handful of U.S. outposts, managing to get as far as the general's command post. However, they soon met with an onslaught of heavy American fire and suffered a loss of 3,500 men. Although the fighting continued well into 1943, Japan never again found themselves close to Henderson Field. Operation Shoestring was the Allies' first step in defeating Japan, but they still had to worry about Germany. After all, Germany was in a brutal fight with the Soviet Union that could very well affect the Allies' ability to win the war. On June 21, 1942, General George Marshall delivered the news to British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, and US President Franklin D. Roosevelt that the British had been defeated at Tobruk by German forces and now vowed to continue to Suez. This led President Roosevelt turn to his ally Churchill and ask, "What can we do to help?" Soon after Operation Torch, an invasion that would take place in French North Africa was crafted. On November 8, 1942, the Western Task Force began landing on Moroccan Atlantic coast, bracketing the city of Safai, Fidela, and port of Liyouate. Vichy French naval forces sortied out under the cover of smoke and coastal artillery ready to attack the Fidela landing force. However, heavily outgunned, the Vichy fleet was pretty much destroyed, and by November 10th, the US had successfully landed their troops. The French surrendered the city before an all-assault could be launched. As the Centre Task Force landed on November 8, British troops faced resistance from the Vichy French at Oran. After a heavy naval fire, on November 9, the French as well surrendered Oran. The Eastern Task Force, which is made up of British and American forces, began their landing on November 8 as well. Upon meeting resistance, they were aided by an anti-Vichy coup. The resistance was able to temporarily seize key facilities, disable short batteries, isolate Vichy leaders, and cause mass confusion. On November 10th, the French again surrendered the city to both US and British forces. A ceasefire was negotiated on November 13, and an agreement was reached that would restore Northwest Africa to free French control and bring in Vichy forces in Africa into an alliance with US and British forces. With the Vichy French defeated, Germany would now be forced to fight on both of its western and eastern flanks. Operation Torch accomplished many great things for Allied forces, with perhaps the most important being that American and British forces were finally able to seize the offensive from German and Italian forces after 3 long years. In 1942, the United States, the Soviet Union, and Great Britain entered an alliance to stop the Axis power aggression. Then in late 1942, the Allies embarked on a series of risky military campaigns over the course of 6 months that Winston Churchill later would describe as the hinge of fate. First came Guadalcanal and Operation Shoestring, then North Africa and El Alamein, then the Battle of Stalingrad, and finally North America and Operation Torch, all resulting miraculously in Allied victories that took place within the same week as one another, and with each of these victories, the Allies found themselves one step closer, halting Axis tyranny and aggression forever in its tracks.